Question number 2. Christmas might be a time for tradition, but what became old-fashioned or fell off the radar in CX in 2024?
It's an interesting one because I don't think it's quite fallen off the radar yet. This is maybe more of a prediction than a what's fallen off.
Okay.
I think dispositions. All of that
Interesting.
manual data, at the end of a phone call in a contact center, you have an agent have a list of 10, 20, 100 reasons, and they have to pick one or maybe two. I think what we're starting to see with the more practical applications of AI is you don't need that now because the data is going to tell you what happened. So I think we're going to get smarter there. So it's not quite fallen off the radar yet. I'm working with some customers at the moment, and we're still having to look at dispositions because the technology is not quite there just yet to go, this is definitely what happened. But in the next year, it feels like that's going to evolve more and more, which is going to make employee experiences better. It's going to give companies a lot more insight. So not quite fallen off the radar, but it feels like it's edging its way.
I think one that always strikes me is how little people are willing to talk about AHT now. So I think this has been coming for a while, but maybe 2024 was the year when it almost became taboo to talk about AHT, and yet it drives so much of what we do. So, I get the whole point of how we manage agents and those conversations so that we're not putting people under too much pressure. However, I think, people just stopping talking about AHT might not be the right answer.
Yeah, no.
I would say I would go in a little bit of a different direction. I see a lot of organizations that finally are stopping with the we've always done it this way. So they're ready to embrace new processes, new technology. So this is something that I would say is a very positive change lately, that we're ready to embrace the new ways of working rather than always saying, it worked for the previous 20 years. Let's keep it this way.
I'm almost tempted to say customer experience fell off the radar in 2024. I think, at a macro level, I know we're not living through a recession, but it kind of feels like a lot of people are living through a recession. There's lots of cost pressures, and I think that kind of that sort of glittery AI dream for the CFO have been a massive way of reducing costs in terms of employment. As that's a real big driver. I don't know actually any organization really that isn't under cost pressures. So I do feel like actually delivering great customer experience has gone west. I was at an event a few weeks ago, and I won't say whose it was, which was really interesting. It's very much an IT focus, very much about how people implement change. And every speaker said, but this wasn't about cutting jobs. And at the risk of being cynical, and I've not read their business cases, I'm pretty sure it was quite a bit about cutting jobs in these automation, increased self-serve AI type projects. But again, in the world of customer experience, kind of nothing ever dies, does it? And I think we've discussed before, haven't we? There's such a long continuum between your very, very sophisticated buyers who've got lots of money because they've got lots of customers and lots of interactions, and people who are still on. We get quite a few phone calls. Tuesdays tend to be busy, but I'm not sure how many we get. And we're managing our email through Outlook, and that's it. And I'm lucky enough that I kind of work in through both extremes. So I think last year and maybe next year, there's certain things that are going to come back in. So at Expo, I was talking to somebody who is an IVR specialist. And I know a couple of IVR specialists, but there's probably not that many around. And he says, well, I reckon I'm good till 2030. After that, I'm not too sure. Now, talking about, optimizing your IVR sounds, not exactly bleeding edge. But if you look at all the stats, all the research, voice communications is not going away. And next to appallingly designed rules-based chatbots that don't appear to be able to answer the simplest question you can imagine, I think IVRs are probably the most obvious thing in our CX world that are just often useless. You know, it's that kind of inside out language. It's confusing terminology. They're often disjointed. You know, if you get into 3 layers of IVR, we kind of understand from an internal perspective why that's necessary. But if you think anybody listening to your 3rd level of IVR question, they're really not. So I think there's loads to be done around IVR design, as well as this sort of technology aspects to actually take it beyond voice, to actually allow it to interact on a phone. And even something that seems even equally as old is, I remember when Q Busters came in, and you could sort of press a button and say, "You call me back." And again, I regard that as a kind of quite an old-fashioned sticking plaster type solution. But if you think at what's happened to levels of customer service in terms of certainly voice since COVID, and it hasn't got a lot better since, certainly if you look at all morale stats, those bear that out. I think people are now make a phone call, probably already stressed, slightly wound up, don't really want to be doing it, with a slight sense of dread. How long am I going to wait? And, you know, again, very, very much an industry perspective, but I don't think 80% of consumers think they'll get their call answered in 20 seconds. And imagine if they did, half of them would, you know, drop the phone in shock. So I think that sort of, from it being, we're failing to answer your call, but I tell you what, press this button and we might call you back. I'm sure years ago that felt like this isn't a great remedy to a situation of failure. And now I think people's expectations are so low, pitching it as almost we'll do the queuing for you, and now you can go away and do something else with your life. If somebody's thinking they've already been queuing 5 minutes and they might have to queue for 20, that's probably a more appealing prospect. It's not high tech, it's not new tech, but that's something. And I think the final thing, as I continue to not answer your question,
that's fine. That's fine. You carry on. We're loving the insights.
Is because, you know, things have become so tech focused and process focused, and that's really important. You know, one thing I've learned over doing this stuff for too long is, you know, a lot of you need to look at root cause. You need to understand why people are contacting you, and generally it's not because they want a chat or not because they want to be immersed in your brand experience. It's because they've got a problem. But, you know, you can't get away from, ultimately, if it's not self-serve, then you're going to be interacting with a human being, be that digitally or via voice, and they need empathy. They need to have to listen and understand. They need to have a kind of service orientation. So that real basic coaching and training around, firstly, identifying those traits, and secondly, reinforcing or even maintaining them in that difficult BAU world of customer-facing customers, and those increasingly irascible and bad-tempered customers that we've had, particularly for the last 2 or 3 years. There's probably some old-fashioned, you know, basic fundamentals need to be, you know, resurrected. So again, you know, if I was a customer service trainer, I might think, oh, maybe I've got to 2030. I think, like a bit like the IVR guy, you've got a lot more than 2030 to look forward to, but I think there's a lot to get on with out in the real world.
Thank you again, everyone, for your answers there. I think, you know, a real range of opinions again, which is brilliant. So you're 2 out of 3 videos down now. You can't miss the final 3rd act. That's where the narrative comes to its big conclusion. Link to video number 3 in the comments below. Don't forget, again, like this video, please subscribe to the channel and the CCCX update. And I really hope I'll see you guys over on video number 3.